Hello and welcome to this episode of the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. Now, Soul Sync, I will say from the get-go on this episode, because I know some new people are tuning in and listening. The podcast is basically for anyone that's on a journey of awakening. You might be at the very beginnings, perhaps you're asking questions like I was at the beginning, like, what the hell is this universe about? How does any of this make sense? The things I've been told was how life is. You're born, you die, you spend your life, trying to build a life to then just one day it will just dissipate. And it just didn't add up for me. And, I'd always been told, okay, the universe started in a big bang. Or Adam and Eve, ate an apple, and you know where I'm going with this. You know where I'm going. So whether you're at the very beginning, maybe you're having a really hard time in your life at the moment, you might be even struggling with addiction, things like that. You might just be feeling bloody miserable. Don't worry, come in here. There's lots of us here. I'm having a hard time at the moment anyway with my dad's situation. Which I will update you on in a moment. But, if you are perhaps sensitive as well, or, you're an old soul, this podcast is for everyone. What we're seeking here is the truth, love, light, and all things like that. But I do have a little bit of a bias towards mediumship, as you may have noticed, because that's what I am. I used to say I'm a developing medium. Now I just say I'm a medium. But we're going to talk about that on this episode, actually. So you're in for a treat there. But first of all, to update you on my dad's situation, it's been like a roller coaster. So he's now been in basically a coma since last Saturday. So we're on now day 9 of him being in this critically roller coaster ride. We've gone from periods of being called out in the middle of the night, thinking that's it, we're on the final hours, to breakthroughs, getting through surgery, to wondering if he could have the surgery. And where is he now? Because do you know what? I could talk about this for half an hour in the episode. I could just go on about this particular saga, but I'm actually making this episode because I thought, do you know what? I need a bit of a distraction. Let's do something positive. So that's why I recorded this. But in short, he is basically that he's on max everything at the moment in terms of intensive care. Every antibiotic under the sun that the doctor could even think to name. He is on a very special new drug, which is kind of a blood... I'm going to do an awful job at explaining this, but it's like a blood transfusion where they then give him thousands of people's plasma, which is then it's hoped that will help fight the infection. And he's basically completely paralyzed because they've had to sedate him so much because he's got so many tubes and cannulas and whatever. Like the amount of syringe drivers he's got, the room is absolutely packed. Like you can barely get around the bed. There's so many machines. He's holding on and he's stable and he's still fighting. And do you know what? It's really made me think about the power of healing, because I've always liked the idea, again, this is another thing, I've always liked the idea of going to healers and having energy healing, but I've always kind of thought, so if I go back maybe like, how long now? If I go back 3 years ago, I remember when I got Reiki healing, because I was trying all sorts at that time, because I had lots of issues, mainly one of them being bloody addiction, keep being addicted to different things, which is a whole nother episode in its own right, and something I do want to talk about on this podcast, quite a lot, addiction, because I feel like I've barely bloody scratched the surface on it. But I was trying all sorts of modalities, and I remember when I went to this woman that I found on Google, and she had a lot of good Google reviews, because as you do, that's how we find things these days. And that was good enough for me. So I went along to her barge, where she took me onto this tiny little narrow boat where she also lived. And then she gave me Reiki healing. And the boat was swaying from side to side, which actually I really liked that. I thought that was a really nice experience. But I did question afterwards. I thought, well, I didn't really feel anything, or, when's it meant to take effect? And, I'd go for a lot of these holistic therapies and think, I can feel some benefits to that. But, maybe I was just searching for sort of like a magic wand. I don't know. I'll tell you what treatments have worked for me, actually. And trust me, I've tried a lot. There's nothing more I love than going to a healing tent at one of these fairs. And actually, when I was at a healing fair not too long ago, someone came up to me who actually listened to this bloody podcast. And actually caught me off guard because Jason Paul is the name that I use in for my medium work, 'cause it's my granddad's surname. But, you know, I don't often get someone come up to me and go, Jason Paul, so it did make me laugh. But where did they find me? In a healing tent, funnily enough. So I'll tell you what did work for me. I once went to this guy, Eddie, who is like a shaman guy. My mum found him for me when I had psychosis. You know, again, I think we were willing to give anything a try at that point. And basically he takes you into this room and he uses just his mouth to make all of these kind of like really hypnotic sounds. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's kind of like that. But he does it over half an hour and he introduces a few instruments. And the only way I can describe it is it sends you into like this trance. But then what he would do, and you would sort of feel yourself going in and out of this like really dream state where my mind would be firing to loads of different like really random memories that I wouldn't even think of thinking in a normal situation. And then he puts his hand over your stomach and he sort of builds up the intensity of the drum and what he's doing with his mouth. And all of a sudden, he then goes, shh, and it's like all the anxiety is pulled from your stomach and you really feel it. And every experience is quite different, actually. As well, because I've had different ones where he's cut chords, where, you know, I've said that I've gone to there with things I want to cut out my life. And he basically does this ceremony where he sort of walks you through cutting the cord, and then you get to pick what instrument you want for him to cut the cord. And I think it was like golden scissors, but like really magical things, or you could use like the dragon's claw or something like that. I know what you're thinking now. Did I manage to stop doing the thing that he told me to do, well, the thing I went there to stop doing? And actually, I know this sounds really peculiar, but this is just where I was at in my life at that time. I think it made me more inclined to want to do the thing to test if it had taken effect or not. You know, just why would you even do that, Jason? Why would you go to something like that and then test it in that way? But, you know, that's the sort of person I am. I'm one of these people where sometimes I like to take the quick route. Sometimes I like to take the scenic route with things, you see. Sorry, I'm just drinking some coconut water. Do you know what? I never get this thirsty when I have a normal conversation, but when I'm on the podcast, I don't know. Maybe I just speak like so many decibels louder. So, yeah, my dad's situation, he's on, to go back to that, he's on a knife's edge, basically. My poor brother is just beside himself at his bedside, like all, you know, every waking hour. I'm going down to where he lives in London as much as I can, but I'm also trying to run a business which is actually going through, do you know what, I could talk about workloads as well. Really positive today. You know, if you came to the Soul Sync, I'll say this now. If you came to the Soul Sync to be uplifted today, there's going to be some upliftment, but I'm going to tell you, there's just a lot of crap going on at the moment. I could speak this whole hour about things like that. But my business is just going through a really, really, really hard patch. Like, we've been through some hard patches, and when we go through them, I'm like, oh my God, this is the hardest patch we've ever been through. But this time definitely does take the cookie, or take the biscuit, you might say. But do you know what? It's just bringing about a lot of change in my life. And even before all of this stuff with my dad, there was so much change coming up. Like I said in previous episodes, every time I go for a reading, and obviously I've got a lot of medium friends. Actually, I'm not going to say a lot. I've got lots of nice friends who are mediums, and there's nothing like having, friends with equally sensitive and probably somewhat kooky people who are not, you know, I kind of call them like they do in Harry Potter, like muggles. But it is different, you know, if you're kind of had an awakening, and you really believe in, what I believe is the truth, the truth of matters, which is we are souls, we are eternal, we live on forever, and that. But that's even been the more I talk about this on this podcast, and there's so much I could always talk about on these episodes. I was like a staunch. I was a staunch materialist. If I'd have someone have asked me 5 years ago, when you have to tick those forms, what my belief was, it was like very much atheist. But this is where I think the awakening came, because I've always been really sensitive, and when you kind of grow up as a sensitive person, you get told, stop being so sensitive. You have to fit this ideal of what society says that you should be. So you spend your whole childhood effectively, learning good, learning bad, learning that you get rewarded with this, trying to please your parents, seeking rewards by way of love, by exhibiting certain qualities and traits. And we all have that ideal. So, it's very difficult for a lot of people, and I'm sure so many people who listen to this podcast will relate with the fact that when you go through school, it can be really hard as well, especially when you're, you pick up on things. And this is the weirdest thing now. And do you know what? This is only just coming to my mind whilst doing this podcast. But I always used to know when I was at school, I used to feel that I was smarter than the teachers. Not in a way that, it used to get me in a lot of trouble, I'll tell you that for starters. But in a way that wasn't like I was more intelligent, but I just felt like I had this depth. And I now know that was my soul, screaming at me that this wasn't the environment for me. And I felt that. I always used to just feel so much older than I was. And then, and I remember just coming up with things when I was really young, and my mum used to say to me, where the hell is he getting this stuff from? Even the fact that I was like effectively running a bracelet operation in secondary school. I think, no, not even secondary school. It was primary school. I must have been about 9 years old. Maybe even less than that. And it was the days of Hobbycraft. And for anyone of our international listeners, Hobbycraft is like this amazing store that I could basically spend 20 hours in, because it's like a hobby and craft store and it sells everything. And I just love that shop. I'm the sort of person these days where I'm never bored, honestly. At the moment, I'm just getting into painting. I'm trying to do the trance painting, where I go into a trance state and develop that, because ever since I saw Madrado, the trance artist, not so long ago, where I was really fortunate enough to buy one of his paintings where he goes into a trance state for like, do you know what that's what I need to talk about, is the trance week, and that's the whole purpose of this episode, but I'm just rambling on today. But that's what I've been trying to do in my free time as well, is the trance art. So I wanted to talk today on this episode, because I'm going all over the place, but thank you for your well wishes about my dad. We're very much day to day at the moment. I'm going to go see him again at the weekend, but I thought I'd jump on today, do an episode to keep it real, what's going on, and talk about a bit of that. I've actually got, on a completely separate side note, some really interesting episodes that I'm going to be releasing very soon with some wonderful, like really, really, really interesting guests. And you'll get more of me basically going, having lots of penny drop moments. And the kind of funny thing is so far on this podcast, I've been releasing a lot of old episodes. I say old, but unreleased episodes. So some of the ones coming up are ones where, you really do test where my kind of spiritual development is at, because what you actually end up seeing is me of current day asking questions which, are different, let's just say. So basically, before all of this happened with my dad, because I got thrown off, I'd been on a trance week, which I went away for a week's residential course, where the purpose of the course was to get a deeper understanding of the trance states. Now, for anyone that is wondering what I'm on about, thinking maybe I'm on about going dancing on a Friday night, bit of trance, it wasn't that at all. It is basically getting into such a deep level of it's such a deep kind of state, which is really within your own power. It's like really going into a deep passive state. And through that, the spirit world will communicate through you. And that can be expressed in a number of different ways, whether it be, painting, writing, speaking, where the spirit world, they don't take over someone's body. That's, not how it works. I did actually think that was how it worked. But they sort of, my belief anyway, and I will always say that on this podcast, anything I say is just my belief. I'm asking as many questions as the rest of you, I can assure you. So don't take my word for it, find out yourself if you like. But, the spirit world basically build up your energy and really communicate through you. I'm still doing a rubbish job at explaining this, aren't I? But they basically talk through you, and you will have people come out in different accents. You'll see it in their face. It's just a really deep state. Now, I must admit, I wasn't meant to be doing this week. It all kind of came about really last minute. And I thought it was a sign from the universe, as it has been, because this is actually the third course that I've been on in only 16 weeks, which I would never, ever, ever normally do. Normally I do one course a year, because I used to find the weeks really not quite long. And I think part of that was having the wrong teachers. For a good while now, I have realised that I am an emotional medium. I am, meaning, I very much lead from the heart rather than the head. And I was just getting lost in my mediumship for so long. I don't think it was helped by this podcast of having different teachers outside on courses and then interviewing different tutors about different techniques. And I was, like I said, 1 minute I was trying to throw my third eye over my head. The next minute I was trying to push me aura out. Then I was trying to build my power from the inside, deep dive even down within me to find my soul. All of this crazy malarkey, which I didn't realise until now where I am, that all that was doing was putting me in my head, meaning I'm thinking rather than I'm feeling, meaning this isn't the spirit world. But, all the while longer, I hadn't really discovered how to quiet my mind in meditation, which, it was just, it felt like a bloody battle. I just thought, I'm never going to shut this damn thing up. And then I've had to do a lot of work on myself in order to kind of get to that place, which has meant working on, how I worry about things like anxiety, overthinking, being really self-critical on myself. And I've had to go on this journey of really understanding what that voice in my mind actually is. And we all have this internal chatter of the mind. We all do. And it God knows how many thoughts I think we have a day. I think it's like 35,000 thoughts a day we have. Actually, no, I think it's even more than that. I should know because I just put out a LinkedIn post about it the other day, but I can't remember. It's tens of thousands. And basically, we all have that voice. It's the voice that keeps us safe. It's always trying to think ahead. It's always trying to assess threats. If we put this on a really basic level, its job is to assess risks. So we get a lot of anxiety about. That's what our mind does. It creates, it's constantly reflecting on the past. What can I learn? What can I do differently to then plan for the future? So that's when, I didn't really realize this at the time. I used to say about the present moment. And I used to use that. I used to know that as a thing. I used to know that I need to be in the present because I knew that the past wasn't an actual, I knew that the past has been, the future hasn't yet existed. So I need to be in the present because the only way you build memories is by being in the present, because that's what you remember in the future is being in that moment. So I knew that. But, it's one thing to know, to sort of understand something. It's another thing to know something as well. So, and I think there's just been lots of penny drop moments through this period of quietening my mind. I've had to do a lot of ask some really deep questions of myself as well about I think being hard on myself was one. I just had this internal voice that was always being critical, and I've been very successful in my career, I've worked bloody my arse off, but I have been very successful. But I think I've been success through driving myself some of the times through really hard, like self-hate, almost achieving success, which is just so disaligning in itself, because to have other people call you successful, but to be always talking down to yourself, that was the world I was living for a long time. So when I went into this trance week, I went in always believing that trance, I'll say this from the get-go, is for advance. You wouldn't go to a trance week and, for me, the way I saw it placed in the kind of mediumship world was trance is for advance. I'll tell you what, I now believe that trance is the foundation for all mediumship. And I believe that if I would say that, if I'd done that first, I think I'd be further ahead. But actually, I don't think that necessarily is the case, because I think my journey needed me to do the evidential first, because I had so much doubt about whether the spirit world was real. I need bloody real convincing, the amount of evidence I've needed, and then still questioned it, was a lot. But, it was, for me, I think I'm such a logical person in some ways, even though I've got an ADHD brain with the other. So I didn't really know what to expect on the trance week. I kind of knew that there'd be a lot of like sitting and stuff, but I kind of went into that week having what I feel only just recently discovered what my power really is. And I've known I'm in it, but, then I went through a stage of, and I'll say this from the beginning, if you don't know what your power is, about sitting in your power, your energy within your own kind of soul energy, it is a very personal feeling, and this is why teachers, teach you techniques. They teach you kind of ways to go about facilitate exploring these things. But that's why I was getting lost in techniques for ages, and all techniques was putting me was in my head. So I would know sometimes when I was in the energy of that power and that power was building, but then I would go back up to my mind and think, right, I need to now push it out or whatever. And then I would notice that basically that was giving me no control over my power, because I was going from, I was working against myself effectively, because to be in your power, you need to just be still. You need to just settle the mind and know that the power is you not trying to be something that you're not. So for me, it's just been about now just observing that, okay, now I'm in my power. Yes, okay, I feel it. Now just quieten the mind and let it build. So, if you were keeping up with any of this on the Soul Sync today, I'm very applaud you. That's what I want to say. So, what I'm essentially getting at is I went to the trance week knowing how to now get in the power, and having found a way, which is actually just as simple as my friend Donna told me, which was like, honestly, like, I felt I didn't feel silly, but it was like the biggest penny drop. She said to me, put your hands on your heart. And I think I've already told you this story. Put your hands on your heart and say power on. And she said, can you feel the difference? I was like, yeah, I can. And she's like, oh, it's that simple. So that was kind of where I started at the week. So I went there, and the first day I was so in my head, I thought I spoke through trance, but really it wasn't trance. It was me. Just trying to fit in, I think, which is just terrible. It's like so unauthentic. I kind of knew I was doing it, but then, the teacher very kindly reassured me that, it's more authentic not to speak. Even though it wasn't just me speaking, it was an inspired bit of speaking. That was good. Day one, right? Big lesson learned. And then day two, it was actually really interesting to hear some of the mediums doing trance. But what I was finding was I was actually at the point on day two, I'll tell you what, felt like I was about to talk through trance. And, I know from experience of speaking to other people that sometimes it can take a long time, 1-2 years. And even my tutor said I was at the window where it's like an eclipse, my energy is just meeting that spirit person, and then there's this finite amount of window that passes like an eclipse, and then you get a moment to talk. And Yeah, basically, I let the window go because I got on my own head again. I went up to my head for a fraction of a moment, thinking probably much to the thought of, is this really the spirit person? Typical thoughts of the ego getting in the way. So, but I knew what it felt like, and actually, the third time I sat on day 3, I was about to talk. I was all ready. I got over the fact that, yes, Jason, just talk. I tried to hardwire myself in my room that evening. Come on, Jason, what are you holding back for? And then what happened was I felt my heart rate elevate really quickly, and apparently that's really common in trance, but then that made me panic, and then I lost the window again. So I know what you're probably thinking at this stage. Did you talk or did you not? No, I didn't for the week, but I did feel that I really got close nearly every time. And do you know what? I think I knew there was something subtle in the back of me that was making me hold back, and I just couldn't quite get to the bottom of what it was. But that's something that, I obviously need to learn that week. And I think what I learned about the week, I could talk about this so much. And actually, I'll tell you what, there was a lot of things I was going to talk to you about today. I've got like a list here, a very well written out list, just a load of scribbles today, about things I wanted to talk about. And I'm not even going to get a chance to talk about them. I'm going to have to do them on another episode, because I wanted to talk in more detail about my mediumship, because there's been so many interesting things that have happened recently. And like to say, I've been getting signs and synchronicities from the spirit world. Like, there's been a lot of them. So I will talk to you about some of those as well. But I think what I learned from the trance week was the beauty of trance, how amazing it is that the spirit world come through with these messages of love, unity, and messages that just touch every single person's heart. And you leave and everyone says, wow, that touched me, I really felt that, and it's like it spoke and touched every single person. And the intelligence of the spirit world to use the collective consciousness to make sure that there's something in there that touches everyone is just, what amazes me about the spirit world so much is just how intelligent they are. They are so clever, which is why through this period, just before I tell you about that, I'll tell you about Medrado. So Medrado is a spirit artist. I honestly apologise if I've already told you this story, by the way. But Medrado, spirit artist, he basically was about 17 years old, and he was in Brazil. That's where he lives. And he one day got a voice come to him to say, you need to help the children of Brazil. You have been chosen to do this. This is your life's path. So that the voices that he was hearing, he knew weren't his own. He knew he was hearing those sort of outside of himself. And they kept pursuing him to say, you need to do this. And he said, well, I have no means. I have no money. How do I do this? How do I do this? And the voices said to him, you will paint. And he was, confused. And they said, just get the tools to do so. And he then would sit and nothing would happen immediately. And then what he developed very quickly was the ability to have artists, but very great artists, the likes of Monet, I believe Picasso, and artists like that paint through him. And it's said and been told that the artists, Monet has told him that he used to paint for money and fame, and now he paints to help the children. So Medrado goes into a deep trance state where he's standing up, but his eyes are closed for nearly the majority of it, and just in really quick, like 2 minutes 15, some of these paintings would take. He would go and just grab brushes, paints, use his hands and whatever, and it would just be like, honestly, like crazy to see that all this was happening in a trance state with his eyes closed. And what he would paint in just 2 minutes would be beautiful, like vases of flowers with real detail. And you'd think, how the hell, is that possible? Well, of course, I know it's possible. It's the spirit world doing that through him, channeling through him. But, it's a feat of an amazement. And, if you're someone that maybe didn't believe in the spirit world, to see that, you would be questioning, how is that even possible? But then you'd still probably find something in your rational mind, like it was all set up and he had a hidden camera and he had something in his ear. You'd find a way, because, if you want to find a way to make something not real, then you will. Even rhymes. There you go. So it was amazing. And the one I bought was like a forest scene, a Monet. And I was saying to my mum, actually, she was laughing at me, because I say, honestly, I think a real Monet would go for millions, probably you wouldn't even be able to buy one. And I said, I love mine because, mine is refined Monet, who's understood the purpose of life and come back. I've got good Monet. So she laughs at me when I say that. But the trance week, it was magical. It was just, I learned so much, and I could talk about that in quite a lot of detail. And I'm going to do more episodes for you talking about the spirit world, talking about, even I want to talk to you about these morphic fields, because I have had some crazy experiences using them. And honestly, how you can change your energy and vibration and sort of, I want to say, level up in areas of your life pretty quickly. They are really effective for that. And I will say this from the get-go, there is nothing in this for me on the Soul Sync when I talk about these things. I talk about things that I've heard from my medium friends, things that have really respected people that I then try myself. But the morphic fields is something we're going to talk about. But I'm going to keep the episode shorter today, because I still do have a lot of family stuff to do, especially with all that's going on with my dad. But I wanted to do an episode to tell you a bit about trance, tell you a bit about what's going on with me. And as always, I send you lots of love, and I'm really looking forward to the next episode being a beautiful interview that I've done with a guest. So until then, much love. Goodbye.